The ACC media votes are now in for predicted order of finish. They have NC State slotted at 4th. Did they get it right?
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's second Wednesday episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. As always, terms apply. Happy Wednesday for the second time to you all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, the ACC media votes are now in from last week at ACC kickoff. The predicted order of finish from all members of the ACC media have been tallied. The 17 teams have been ranked, and they've been posted for memes surely to be made. So for those listening to us, I just brought up this graphic. This one is made by On3. It lays out 1 through 17, the preseason ACC media poll. Kenton, what were your initial reactions when this poll was released this afternoon?
Honestly, I thought that for the most part, it makes sense. However, Boston College all the way down to 14 got a vote from somebody believing they were going to win it all this year. And I just want to let you all know that AJ Black is a real jokester, that one. He's a real slick guy. However, I've alerted the authorities of your position, and they are moving in shortly. So just be aware of that. No, but in all seriousness, I think that for the most part, this is pretty right. And I think some of these picks are indicative of the belief in other teams, some teams' ceiling versus their floor. For example, Louisville is at number 5. However, Virginia Tech had immensely more people picking them to be potential conference champs. Nobody picked Louisville as potential conference champs. So that's just a thought there about, again, more people are high on Louisville's floor, but if you're talking about ceiling, more people are high on Virginia Tech. NC State is a team that got, I believe, the 4th most votes for a potential champion here. So people are filling the pack. There's belief around the pack, but again, not as much as there is around Florida State, Clemson, or Miami, all in all. So I'm excited to see how this season plays out. I think for the most part, this is on brand. This is on point. So I don't have too many complaints.
For context, AJ Black is the host of Locked On Boston College. We asked him if he was the one vote. He didn't say yes, but he also didn't say no.
He did say no. Yeah, he did say no.
Just real quickly, I'm going to comb through these 17 for those that are listening to us. At the 1 spot, they have Florida State, 2 Clemson, 3 Miami, 4 NC State, 5 Louisville, 6 Virginia Tech, 7 newcomer SMU, 8 the Dirty Foot Club, 9 Georgia Tech, 10 Cal, 11 Duke, 12 Syracuse, 13 Pitt, 14 Boston College, 15 Wake Forest, 16 UVA, and 17, bringing up the rear, is Stanford. I believe if you're within the top 5, if you are 1 through 5 of this preseason poll, I look at you as a contender to win the ACC conference this year. I think any one of those 5 has a legitimate shot to take home the title. You see Virginia Tech at 6. I personally am not really sold on Virginia Tech quite yet. I think they have a good deal of talent, but most of all, their schedule is really, and I mean really soft. I think they have enough talent to win a lot of games this year, but until they see a quality opponent, I don't exactly know what they are. And circling back to NC State, I think 4 is a really, really good spot for the Wolfpack. It shows that the ACC media is taking you seriously. I believe last year, I think we were either 3rd or 4th again. So it's being reflected that people are looking at NC State and they're like, okay, well, they have the talent, they have the coaching. Is this year going to be the year? And essentially that just reflects what all of us Wolfpackers are thinking on our side. We want this to be the year. For NC State to be projected in the 4 spot, that would tell me that a lot of people have some belief that they can make some noise this year. The majority of the chatter is very obviously about Miami at 3. How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? There is an element to Miami that I think they have more talent on their roster this year than they've had in quite some time. NIL did them a massive solid. However, it's going to have to be rubber meets the road for Miami this year. I think the seat's getting warm for Mario Cristobal. Katie in the comments will certainly let us know how she feels about that. I'm not exactly surprised to see Miami at 3. To be honest with you, I think I even voted Miami at 3. I think at some point this year, the talent may have the opportunity to overcome some incompetencies. On that coaching staff. I think Cam Ward's a really good quarterback. Damian Martinez at running back is a monster. They return Restrepo. If they can put all those pieces together, I think 3 could actually be where Miami ends up. But you have Florida State and you have Clemson at the 1 and 2 spot. I'm not at all surprised to see them up there. Florida State, a lot of people think they lost all their talent. They actually picked up quite a deal of talent from Alabama transfers. So Florida State will definitely be in the mix again. I expect them to probably sit atop the ACC for the majority of the year unless they find somewhere to slip up. So that, again, that's where I like NC State here in the 4 spot. I think they're perfectly placed, definitely in a striking distance, but the expectations are not so unbelievably high that things can go off the rail in a hurry.
Yeah, I'll say this. In terms of the top 5, 6 teams or so, I would say NC State does not have the highest ceiling nor the highest floor. However, what NC State does have out of those top 6 teams, I would say, is the greatest mixture of things that kind of matter in terms of what makes a champion and generally what you're looking at there, right? In terms of the mixture of factors that I think go into making a champion, I think that they have the most of all of it, right? In terms of the team with the most returning production, that's Virginia Tech. However, just because production is returning doesn't mean it's the best production. It doesn't mean that you've got the best guys possible for the job there. In terms of Louisville, I think they may, I'm not saying that they guarantee will, they may have the stoutest collective defense out of this group. You still got to put the ball in the end zone somehow. That still is a thing that has to happen there. Miami has the most overall talent. I do not trust their coaching. I do not trust their chemistry. Yeah. I don't think the talent has ever been the main problem at Miami. I don't ever think that's been the case. I've always said with Miami, hey, the chemistry, the coaching, those are the 2 things that'll get them in trouble. Clemson, I would say outside of NC State, had probably the best ending to last year in terms of the momentum that they carry forward and how they ended things out. So they have that, but they also have Cade Klubnik at quarterback. So take that for what you will, but that's the thing. And Florida State, they're another team. They have like everything or most of the things that NC State has for the most part in terms of a really good defense. I think is going to be a little bit better than State's. They have a really good running game and all that. I'm worried about DJU in that quarterback situation. So with that being said, I would say you don't have the same critiques of NC State that you do of all of these other teams where there's a blaring hole that's like, hey, that's going to be a massive problem. I would say the only thing I worry about with State is that chemistry being developed basically on the fly because all of these guys are arriving at campus when they are in terms of, McCall and Rogers and Joe Lee and company. Like, yes, you had a full offseason, but is a full offseason enough for you all to understand each other when you're in live action? It's different when you're shorts and T-shirt during the spring. It's different when you're, playing against your defense in the spring game as opposed to when you're playing the nose defense in the potential conference championship matchup. I think those are very different things there. So that's the big concern there. But again, to me, that's not as big as some of the concerns for the other teams.
I think a lot of the cause of the optimism around NC State is the feeling of balance that this team really has. The offense and the defense feel so much more balanced than they have in quite some time. And when you have all these exciting transfers and a very exciting coordinating staff, it really does feel like the sky could be the limit for this team. And there's a lot less worries about very specific areas than there have been in years past. So personally, I think NC State at the 4 spot is a really good spot to be projected in. And so goes the hype train. Push the gas on that thing. We're ready for it all. Coming up next, we're going to get into some day 1 fall camp offensive buzz before getting into some defensive buzz to close out our show. After a quick word from our sponsors. Our first sponsor of our second Wednesday show is Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. This makes getting tickets faster and easier than ever before. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. So with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. This summer, you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it, they got it. Toggling their all-in pricing feature on the app will show your total up front, so you have zero surprises at checkout. And as always, you can get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect upon arrival. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And again, create an account and use redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Our second sponsor of our second Wednesday show is Factor Meals. Warmer, sunnier days are calling, and you got to fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from, every week you'll have new flavors to explore. You can make your day delicious from breakfast all the way to dessert and stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and even some blackened salmon. And the most important part of all, you keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in just 2 minutes with no shopping, no prepping, cooking, or even cleaning up. Head on over to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off of your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com. Now time to talk a little day one fall camp buzz. We'll start here with the offense and then get into the defense after a couple minutes of this. So, starting with the offense, it's really no surprise that the number one concern on offense is more than likely both the health and the depth of the offensive line. Based on what little we heard out of day one, it feels like the offensive line is getting off to a really good start in the 2024 season. Zeke Correll is coming in to play center this year, needs to be a leader, and so far seemingly sounds like he's very much playing the part, and that goes a long way. We talked about that sort of impact that'll have on the entirety of the offense. The big man up front leading the way will certainly bleed through to the rest of the offense. But for me, the biggest thing will be the health of the offensive line. They have to stay healthy all season long in order for this machine to operate properly. Now, a name that I keep hearing, and I was hearing it in the spring as well, Duke Scott. Duke Scott is a freshman running back. Maybe not a name you would have expected to hear, but you even heard the coaching staff say last year, I think Coach Dorn was the one that said it, that if Duke Scott was a freshman last year, he would have gotten a ton of carries. And so far, it sounds like he looks incredibly ready to play the part of a college running back. Now, I don't know how many touches he'll end up getting this year. Obviously, you have Jordan Waters, Kendrick Raphael, and even Hollywood Smothers back there in the backfield. If Duke Scott is already looking way ahead of schedule, do you think there might be a little bit of urgency to get him some touches?
You know, the hits just keep on coming for Locked On Wolfpack because there was a pod that predicted the Duke Scott ascension as like, hey, this kid is probably going to be our fastest back on day one. Lo and behold, he can do other things besides be fast. What a time. What a time to be alive. I'm not saying that y'all need to give us the credit of like we're clairvoyance or something here, but I'm just saying hit after hit, check the batting record. Now, with that being said, I'm super excited to hear that Duke Scott is going to be good because it brings something different to the game. When you talk about speed kills and all that, it just brings a different element when you have a guy that is a certified home run hitter from anywhere on the field. He's not deceptively fast. He's not sneaky. That young man is an absolute angle breaker. You think that you have an angle on him? If you're looking at the side of his jersey, you'll be looking at the back of it shortly. The young man can fly, and to hear that he's playing ahead of schedule already, that's very exciting for me because I imagined it was possible that there was so much depth in the backfield he may have had to wait his turn till next year. But I knew that he's got playmaking ability to where it's like it's tough to redshirt a guy like that because, again, it's tough to say, hey, a guy who can break the game open with any touch, may not need to be on the field. So I'm super excited to see how his career plays out and how the rest of this camp plays out for him.
Another freshman name that we're going to have to be keeping an eye on is Jonathan Paylor. Now, Jonathan Paylor joined the team over the summer. He was not here for spring ball, as I believe he was still running high school track. So he is here now and experiencing his first NC State football action on day one. From everything we know about Jonathan Paylor, all the way through his recruitment, the level of player that he is, the pure untethered speed that Jonathan Paylor brings to the table, I feel like you have to find a way to get that man some touches this year. I don't know if it'll be on kickoff return or punt return or specialty formations where he's running some kind of jet sweep, maybe out of the backfield. If you have a guy that is so freakishly athletic like Jonathan Paylor is, kind of in the same breath of like a KC, you have to find a way to get him the rock.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I liken it to how Nyheim Hines was used his freshman year.
Perfect analogy.
I believe he had more receiving yards than rushing yards his freshman year because, again, with certain guys, find a way. Doesn't matter how you do it. Doesn't matter what you – find a way to game plan the ball into his hands and tell everybody else to block or get your behind out the way, okay? Because I think Paylor is another one of those special guys that, you know, you talk about speed, that young man is a blur. I mean, he is absolutely electric with the ball in his hands. So I'm very excited to see how this group does in terms of you know, the young guys, the transfers, all that, because there are so many new faces who have the opportunity to contribute massively. Because with all due respect to the players from last year, with all due respect to the returners, the guys who graduated, the guys who transferred out, there was not this. You did not have multiple guys where you're like, hey, if they're even, they're leaving. You did not have multiple big body guys that you felt like, hey, these guys can go up in high point. Not only can they will more often than not. It just wasn't there. So I'm super excited to see what these guys look like going forward.
And the last guy that I was chomping at the bit to hear about was Justin Jolie. And apparently he looks possibly even more impressive than he did in the spring game. Put on some healthy weight, moves extremely well for a guy his size. I think if I heard correctly, they also practiced in the indoor facility and they had the AC off, which was very funny to try and condition the guys to play in some very high temperature games here, late August, early September. I think it was Pack Pride that had it. They interviewed Justin Jolie about his thoughts on it. Being Jolie, a kid from New York and who played at UConn last year, I can only imagine the type of culture shock that was to step into a highly insulated building. It probably had to be like in the 90s in there. And then let alone running around and sweating the entire time you're in there.
Yeah, I'm sure that he walked out thinking, hey, you know, we're going somewhere nice. We're going somewhere with AC like the indoor. And then next thing you know, the coach would probably like, lock the doors, turn off the AC. We're going to the bad place. This is not the good place. You're going to the bad place, young man. And you know, it absolutely is a thing that needs to be trained because I think the ability to play in inclement weather is a very important factor in the game. And inclement weather can include, you know, a heat index of 112 or whatever the case may be. That's part of the game. You have to be prepared for it. So I like the coaches prepared them for it. But you're absolutely right in that, you know, that may be new for some guys. That may be tough to deal with at first.
We know the first two games of the season are both night games, but they're still going to be muggy. You know, early September in the Carolinas, it is still every bit of muggy as it is in August. So it's better to get acquainted with it now on your own terms and not have to be sucking wind on the sideline come September 7th. But just a little bit of early buzz from the offense on day one. Certainly going to be much, much more over the course of the month of August. We can't wait to hear additional updates as they go along. So far in the minimal updates, the offense looks good. The guys look physically impressive. They look physically healthy, and that's really all you can ask heading into fall camp. Coming up next, we're going to close out this episode talking about the defensive buzz from day one after a quick word from our sponsors. Our third sponsor of the day is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning championships. But it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, and LED headlights, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. That's because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Last couple minutes of our second Wednesday show. Now time to get into the day one buzz for the defense. Now, one of our biggest defensive concerns entering the season is the depth and the overall play of the linebackers. Now, I believe the early indications out of day one, they had Sean Brown working at the weak, Caden Fordham at the Mike, and Devon Betty at the Sam. What are your initial thoughts upon hearing that?
Hey, I think that this is going to be an interesting group to see how they gel, how they coalesce and mesh together. Betty at the Sam, that's very interesting because when you think of the Sam linebacker role, that's a guy that's going to have to cover the long side of the field. Like that's legitimately what a Sam is, the strong side of the formation or strong side of the field, which is often the side that is furthest from, or the side that is furthest from out of bounds is going to be your strong side or field side. It's going to be interesting to see how Betty covers that space, And I know some people are going to think, well, why wouldn't you put Sean Brown there? Because the Will is the guy that in this defense is off the line of scrimmage the most and gets to have the flexibility and freedom to kind of roam and do things because he's generally going to be covered up a lot, which is where Peyton Wilson played a lot last year. So I'm very excited to see what this linebacking core can do together and how Betty looks at the Sam. Far be it for me to tell Coach Gibson I know how to do his job better than him, okay? That is a multiple-time Brewers Award nominee and probably should be a Brewers Award winner by now, but, we'll see.
For me, I think Devon Betty will be very, very key to the overall play of the linebacking core. In a sense, I kind of think that the linebackers are going to go as he does. I have a lot of faith in Caden Fordham out of what we've seen of him these last couple of years. I have a ton of faith in Sean Brown, to be quite honest, as well. Everything we've heard about his instincts and his ability to slot down and play the linebacking position. We told you earlier today that the man is running currently a 4.43, so he has the speed, probably and then some, to get it done. So I think a lot of focus is going to fall on Devon Betty. And we've had our criticisms of Betty in the past, not trying to single him out, but he really has to have a massive year this year for NC State defense to be able to hold down the fort in the way that they're very accustomed to. Bumping up to the defensive line, we've talked a lot about Brandon Cleveland and how we need him to have a big year. I think he's slated for a monster year at nose tackle. And I know they brought in a couple depth pieces to come in behind him, Chaz Wallace from Colorado. But if Brandon Cleveland stays healthy the entirety of the year and he can take the majority of those snaps, he is a difference maker on that defensive line. And that makes life a lot easier for the guys like Davin Vann and Red Hibbler.
Yeah, for sure. And the reality of this thing is going to be very simple. In terms of, you talk about the linebackers and what helps them, hurts them, all that type of stuff. There's nothing that hurts a linebacker more than a guard or center climbing and being in their lap right away. There's nothing that hurts a linebacker more. So having a guy like Cleveland not only be a penetrator up the field that offenses have to worry about, but even laterally having to put two guys on them is going to make it easier for those linebackers to roam and make plays behind them. So I'm very excited to see what that looks like with reports coming that he's just been phenomenal.
And lastly, going back to the secondary, Jahad Carter. I've heard very positive buzz around Jahad Carter and how he's going to look in the back half of that secondary. We talked a lot about the experience that he brings to the table when he first committed to NC State. He was previously an all-ACC defender when he was up at Syracuse. Couldn't see a whole lot of playing time up at Ohio State due to injury, but he more than likely feels like he has the world to prove of himself in his last year of eligibility. So Jahad Carter could be slated for a massive year back there in the NC State secondary. We know what Aiden White is. He's going to lock down one side of the field. Brandon Cisse, we've talked a lot about the opportunity for Brandon Cisse to rise up and be a star on the other side of the field. Can he hold serve with Aiden White on the opposite side of him? He's going to be tested for sure because teams do not want to be thrown at number 3 over there. So Brandon Cisse is yet another player that needs to step up in a major way.
I'm very intrigued because, I think the world of Cisse, and everybody else does too. Every time you hear people talk about him, you hear other folks saying that, hey, they think the world of him. To hear that there's a cornerback competition over there tells me good things are happening. Tells me very, very good things are happening.
And lastly, for special teams, I saw on Twitter that Hollywood Smothers was handling the kickoff return duties on day one. I think that's a home run assignment for Hollywood Smothers. Perhaps he won't see a ton of snaps in the backfield, obviously with Raphael and Waters more than likely slotted ahead of him. But Hollywood Smothers has that breakaway speed again, yet another guy that you somehow, some way, you got to find the way to get him the ball. And kick return could just be that perfect spot for him. Perhaps in some instances making a difference before our offense even steps foot on the field.
Yeah, for sure. And the guy who is a guy who has the ability to set us up in good positions in terms of field position and all that, a guy who has the ability to take it home. You know, losing Julian Gray, they're left a void in that kick return game. Objectively speaking, Gray was a dangerous weapon back there. And so to see now that we could fill that void with a guy that's potentially equally as dangerous, that's big time.
That'll do it for our second Wednesday episode here. Thank you all so much for joining us yet again. Be sure to hit that like button. Drop your comments down in the comment box. Tell us what you think about the ACC Media Poll. Is NC State correctly slated at 4th? If not, let us know in the comments. And mash that subscribe button. We will see you all tomorrow on Thursday. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.